the results of the PDA Safer Pharmacies survey continue to show the vast majority of pharmacists still feel physically unsafe, at least some of the time at their work. The PDA calls upon all community pharmacy employers to make clear statements to employers, patients and customers about the consequences of any act of violence on their premises, and CCA members are working with the British Retail Consortium and the National Business Crime Centre to tackle the ongoing issue. And several members co-signed a letter to the Prime Minister in February calling for a new statutory offence for assaulting, threatening or abusing a retail worker. Mr. Harrison, Chief Executive of CCA, added. But I am pleased to say that we have been joined by an expert on the subject, the expert being Paul Day from the Pharmacists Defence Association. Paul Day leads the senior management team for the PDA and PDA Union. The PDA is a not-for-profit organisation which supports the needs of individual pharmacists and pharmacy students, and when necessary defends their reputation. The PDA is the largest membership organisation and only independent trade union exclusively for pharmacists in the UK. So Paul Day, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, and welcome to the Breakfast Show here on the Voice of Islam.
Yeah, and on you, and good morning, and thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for coming. And, you know, just to start us off, what are the key reasons behind the increasing violence towards pharmacists that we're seeing?
Well, we understand that people go into a pharmacy may be worried about a loved one, they may be on medication themselves, they may be worried about their own health because they're in a pharmacy, there's a medical issue perhaps. But there's no excuse for it. I mean, we think a big underlying factor is that it's on the high street, it looks like a shop, and that people, think, well, if I go into a greengrocer's, it takes a minute for a greengrocer to put a bag of apples together. Why does it take 10 minutes for the pharmacist to put a box in a bag? But of course, pharmacists are highly qualified people who are making sure that medicines are safe. They're looking at each individual, they're looking at the mix of medicines they've got, and they're saying, is this a safe thing? Is there advice I need to give? Is the prescription actually accurate? Because, errors can happen. And so that life-saving action that they're taking takes a while. So I think sometimes, or we think sometimes, people go in with an expectation, all I'm doing is buying a box of something. Actually, it's part of the health service. There's a clinical process happening, and so people get frustrated that it takes a while. But again, there's no excuse. I mean, during the pandemic, obviously, in the highest of lockdowns, the only things that were open were providers of medicines and providers of food. So we saw immense levels of abuse and violence against pharmacists as people were venting towards them. When the lateral flow test started to run out, people were venting, and it's just not acceptable.
And according to a PDA survey, 85% of participants experience abuse at work. Why do you think pharmacists continue to work in such conditions, or is it out of necessity?
Well, I mean, that is another story which we're involved with, is that many pharmacists are now wanting to leave what people might know as chemist shops, community pharmacy, the Boots or the local independents or the supermarket pharmacies. And so those employers are now having difficulty sometimes filling shifts. There's more pharmacists than there have ever been. But they're particularly not wanting to work in community pharmacy. It is partly because of the abuse. It is also partly because of working conditions, and that's another thing the employers need to put right. But that is a challenge because these people and 2/3 women, the profession, in that environment, facing abuse, or they can work somewhere where they're treated like a health professional, and so they look for jobs elsewhere.
And why do you think there's a lack of funding for community pharmacies?
Well, the English government have cut the contract a few years ago, and so the cost of the cost of running a pharmacy in England is not as profitable. The operation is not as profitable as perhaps it once was. But actually, we're a UK-wide organisation, and it's a UK issue. And actually, the Scottish and Welsh government and the Northern Irish government invest better in community pharmacy. So I think it's a bit of a red herring to say it's down to the cut of funding that caused this, because it happens all across the UK. But because of that, there is a lack of there's a opportunity missed in that community pharmacy is really the gem in the whole of the NHS. Even if you're not registered with a doctor, you can go in and see a qualified health professional in the heart of the community, and the government could do a lot more to use community pharmacy to bolster the health service. Now, that's partly this thing about if you treat it like a shop, it's just a shop. Actually, if you say this is a clinical health setting where the community are in and out, even without appointment, we could provide more services in there, but you can only provide those services in a sustainable way if you have enough staff. So it's about the government funding to have better staff in there. But in terms of violence, in terms of the other conditions and problems in community pharmacy, bit of a red herring for many of it to say it's down to the contract, because it happens across the UK, not just in England.
And what measures do you think can be taken to resolve the issue of violence in the workplace, especially towards pharmacists?
Well, in terms of protecting pharmacists and the team and other patients, of course, because if an incident goes on and other patients are in there, it's not good for them either. What the owners, the employers, should do is firstly do a risk assessment, and we've provided a tool on our website which gives guidance and suggestions of what sort of things to look out for. So at each branch, and thinking of all hours of the day, do a risk assessment. Where might staff be vulnerable? Are there times where, and some, it's regrettable, but some need a security guard sometimes a day. Some need simple things like a panic button or a mirror so you can see what people are doing in the corner before they work themselves up into a state to do something. Do the staff have a relationship with the other shops in a parade of shops? So that if something happens, people warn each other. So we provide a tool on our website which employers can use for free to help them identify things. They then should be able to make whatever those measures might be. It depends on a location by location basis. We think the government could help fund that and should, but if they don't, the employers still should, to keep patients and staff free. But the other aspect is the zero tolerance. There's already a potential for a double penalty if you assault a pharmacist, because we made sure when legislation came in about protecting emergency workers that pharmacists were involved in that. But what you need is a practical zero tolerance. So if you come in and are abusive to a pharmacist or a member of their team, or you threaten them, you're violence, and a lot of this is racist abuse, you should be banned from that pharmacy. Now, you still should get medical treatment. If you're in a big urban area, London, Birmingham, Manchester, there will be other pharmacies, and hopefully you learn your lesson at the first one, you transfer to another one. If you're in a rural area, you can still be banned from the premises, and if need be, have to collect your medicines at the door. But that needs to be strictly enforced, because where there are no consequences for being abusive, why would these aggressors stop?
Definitely. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. We would love to speak to you more in regards to this. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. And we also look forward to speaking to you very soon in regards to this topic. And whenever we do speak about this topic again, it would be lovely to speak to you again about this.
Yes, please. Lovely to come on. Thank you so much for asking me on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining.